to CCIG. Just out of curiosity, we invited our clients and prospects. How many of you in the room are CCIG clients? How many of you are CCI prospects or not CCI? We'll be working on you later. Work you hard. So this is one of a number of different safety and compliance related workshops that you're doing throughout the year. And we hope these are of value to you. By virtue of the fact that we have people in seats, this would seem to be important. Didn't come here to be bored and confused by me, so evidently subject matter is important to you. I will do my best before and confuse you. If you're offended by sarcasm, I could probably just get up and leave, perhaps fly. But I believe that it's possible to have a little fun in a safety workshop like this. We're going to be spending a lot of time with each other, and we'll probably be here the full 3 hours. I have a lot of content. Many of you are like, well, geez, I had somebody who got a cut, they got stitches, medicine. All I want to know, dude, is if that goes on water. And we'll talk about that. But we have other things to discuss as well that are, in fact, record keeping related. So, the other thing, before I'll forget, how I will, is you have cards in front of you. If you're really into self-abuse, you can scan the QR code and watch the entire 3-hour content again. See, that please let me know, and I'll some plots will help. But if you scan the QR code, you will also have access to a copy of the presentation and, more importantly, the spreadsheet that somebody at CCIG manipulated and took care of to make it easier to read. We're going to get through all this content at some point in the future. But those documents may be useful for you to refer to in the future. So let's get started. There's my title slide. Full story about title slides. So for many years, I co-presented with an attorney. I've been at CCIG for 2 years. Prior to that, I worked for a large insurance broker in the Chicago area. Prior to that, I worked in safety and construction and chemical manufacturing in Texas. But I would co-present with this man, and he would put a title slide up with his picture. I thought, well, if you're presenting to people, why is it necessary to put a picture of yourself? And it was a picture that he took of himself probably when he was 30. So I decided to put a twist on it. This is my title slide. That's who's going to be presented to you. All right. First thing I want to cover are updates. Not a whole lot going on in the world of OSHA, with the exception of a couple of things. One actually not from OSHA, but one from the Department of Labor, which OSHA is a part of, but will have an impact on safety and how we do our records. How many of you are aware of a final rule that was just issued about independent contractors? So here's the surprise. On January 10th, the Department of Labor issued a final rule that defines what an independent contractor is. The rule takes effect on March 11th. What's expected to happen is that people that are currently treated as an independent contractor under this rule, the Department of Labor will consider to be an employee. In other words, you won't be able to issue a 1099 for that employee if it meets this certain criteria. You will have to consider them as an employee. That's important because if you use 1099 independent contractors now, they're responsible for their own workers' compensation. They're responsible for their own benefits. That will shift. A 1099 worker, if OSHA gets involved in an accident injury investigation, they may determine that your 1099 worker is an employee, goes in your log. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information about this because the law is so vague. It actually has said in many of the legal summaries I've read that it will take case law to determine. And if you're lucky, you'll be in one of those cases. That would not be. You're going to have to pay attorney's fees to push that. So this is pretty big. And look for more of this in the future. The agency has increased the penalty. They do every year. It used to be a once every 10 years. It'd go from $7,000 maximum up to $12,000. So now they adjust it every year based on cost of living adjustment. So it's now the maximum penalty for in serious violations other than serious $16,000. COVID, I've decided because how many people have COVID? How many people can't get up? States show the break. So when it comes to COVID, hopefully we're doing the worst of it. But I do find it interesting that OSHA requires COVID cases be reported on your log if it's determined that they are work-related. That rule is still in effect. However, if somebody catches the seasonal flu or RSV in a work-related scenario, it will not require. Some of what I will explain to you doesn't make sense. So if you attempt to ask me why it is this way, I really have no explanation, but I'm explaining the law. Another aspect, which is interesting to me, is that OSHA, if you mandate an employee to take a vaccination, such as tuberculosis or hepatitis vaccination series, if they suffer a reaction because you mandated that employee to take that vaccine, it must be reported on the law. The one exception is if you mandate COVID vaccinations, which is legal to do in Colorado. Many states it's now illegal. If you mandate a COVID vaccine and there's an adverse reaction, you are not required to report that. The thing that we're going to talk about today will apply to some of you in the room, but may not apply to others. Record keeping and electronic record keeping in particular has now become so complicated that it takes a safety person a while to kind of sort it all out. In July of 2023, OSHA published a final rule that adds complexity to the record keeping process. I'm going to go through these in detail, but essentially, some of you in the room, how many of you are reporting electronically now? And it's basically essential information. How many recordables, how many lost workday incidents, how many restricted workday cases, right? How many hours? For some of you in the room, you're now going to have to report details about every accident on the law. Where it, what happened, what led up to the accident. We'll go through that screen. The only thing that won't be submitted is the employee's name. And here's something really important you should know. All of this information is published online. All of the safety data that you're reporting is available to the public online. This means labor attorneys, work comp attorneys, competitors, customers, everybody has access. So we are, Nate, you have a looking concern. Doesn't sound good, but everything goes back to a point that I will make throughout this presentation. This makes it increasingly important that you only put on the log those injuries that you require. Many people in my career have told me, you know what, the OSHA record-keeping standard, it's complicated. I don't like to get into details. So rather than make a mistake, I put everything in. Well, when you do that, you're exposing yourself, literally. You're exposing yourself to making your record look worse than what it really is. And I would also say in this room, I know we have a mix of contractors, raise your hand, and non-contract, raise your hand. So I'm preaching to the choir when I'm talking to the contractors, say, well, because they know this. Their records have been scrutinized by their clients forever. It's the non-construction clients. It's not part of your work. You don't have customers saying, show me your incident rates. However, now these incident rates are being shown to not just in OSHA, obviously. If you over-report to OSHA, I'm going to tell you about a program which doesn't apply to contractors, where if you report and your incident rate is higher than what your peer group is, you'll be targeted for inspection. They actually look at the data you're submitting, calculating your rate, and then deciding whether or not it needs to be accepted. Called site specific. So I'll get into detail about the additional layer of OSHA record keeping. Not a whole lot going on. I used to be able to tell you it was easier when I was in Chicago because, you know, we had a bigger client base and I could see the ebbs and flows of inspection. Can't really tell you if they're up or down in this particular area. But not a lot of activity when it comes to other things. There were standards that OSHA wanted to issue that had been installed. They want to write a COVID and healthcare. So they want to write a standard on COVID, but they're going to limit it to the healthcare. There's an update on FASCOM that they would like to issue, haven't done it. A heat illness prevention standard, which many of you know about, especially in construction, that's been solved, as well as an all-encompassing what they refer to as infectious diseases. It's not unusual. It's unbelievable to me. But when the confined space regulation came out decades ago, they had been working on 20 years. Now, I used to joke that confined spaces only existed starting in 92, whatever the standard was issued. The fact is, OSHA knew about that. It took 20 years to get that through the regulatory class, which is insane. We have a hazard that needs to be addressed. They ought to be able to be more responsible. Whatever. Oh, my opinions are offered to you. So, it's important to know that OSHA operates in 10 different regions of the country because each region is different. Colorado is in Region 8. I've worked for many years in Region 5. Local enforcement programs are unique to each region, even though there's crossover all over the country. So there's multiple local enforcement programs, LEPs, means the acronyms. Safety people use acronyms, but we're really not that smart. If you use acronyms, it makes it look like you're smart. So I'll speak in riddles. So the local enforcement program for this particular region are noise exposure, but in a non-construction setting. Gary, what difference would it make noise harm in construction or industry? No answers. There is no difference, and I had no idea why. But that's what it is. So if you're in something other than construction, you should be concerned about OSHA focusing on noise exposure in your workplace. Forklifts, power industrial trucks, crossover between construction, manufacturing, other industries. Work zone safety, obviously, this is the people who work in road construction work zones, so construction, and then falls in construction. That's been a top priority of the agency for many years. All right, I touched on site-specific target. This was revised in February of last year. OSHA will target the following non-construction importance. So, those of you in construction, this does not apply. For those of you who are reporting electronically, OSHA's looking at the data. If your injury experience incident rate, so your DART rate, your reportable rate, your lost workday rate, exceed your peers, you could be targeted for inspection. If you are supposed to report electronically and don't report, you could also be inspected. They know who the employers are. The regional offices actually look at this. But then, the part that makes me laugh is sometimes an excellent safety record may work to your disadvantage. Because when you report that data to OSHA, somebody's scratching their head going, well, that looks too good to be true. We're going to have to get in there and inspect to make sure that they're telling the truth. So the presumption is that you could be lying and you'll have a spot check of inspection. You got nothing to hide. It's no big deal. But how many of you would like to go through that effort anyway, just because you might find it interesting? As a benefit, we're always trying to deliver value as your broker, as providing services. So, as a benefit and value to each of you, I provided your name and the company's name to the local OSHA area office, and they've agreed to conduct, it's free of charge, the inspection. They will conduct an inspection for you. My understanding, though, is that the recommendations, nobody's left yet. Working on it. Any questions on site-specific targeting? They're looking at the data that you reported from 2019 through 2021. Haven't caught up with 2022 data yet. That there's a lag period involved. So if you were targeted, they want to go back and look at your incident rates. If you're targeted for inspection, they're looking at the 3-year period from 2019 to 2020. Years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, they had this site-specific targeting program, but the companies that were targeted for inspection was published on the OSHA website. And as a safety consultant at the time, we would go in, find our clients at the broker I worked at, and notify them that they were on the list, because knowing is better than being caught by surprise. If you know that there's a chance that you'll be inspected, then you're going to be better prepared. So you won't be on the list, but remember, what is the criteria that will cause your business to be potentially inspected? What did I say? The incident rates. They're going to look at the incident rates based upon the data you provided, and they're comparing to what you say is your peer group. It's another issue that we're going to get into. You tell OSHA the business that you're in. If you pick the wrong code that represents your business, that's a less dangerous operation, you're giving OSHA the impression that you're in something less dangerous perhaps than what you really do, and therefore you're going to be overstating because of the benchmarking. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. As far as questions go, if you have one, I'm the kind of presenter that would prefer that you bring them up when it's on your mind as opposed to waiting at the break and then taking 52,000 questions. So throw something at me, raise your hand, please participate. So the record keeping standard is an entirely separate standard. We have probably two standards that apply to people in this. We have the standards that apply to construction, and that standard number is called what? What's the number? 1926. Those are the construction standards. What are the non-construction standards? 1910. Well, record keeping is 1904. These were not the years in which these standards were written. They just happen to be in the numbering scenario. So it stands alone. And the reason it stands alone is because the rules for record keeping apply to all businesses. Whether you're in construction, manufacturing, shipbuilding, onshoring, there's a mining, there's a bunch of different safety standards that apply. But the record keeping standard is consistent and built upon. So let's look at the purpose, right? How many think I need to look at? All right. So the purpose is to require employers to report all new work-related injuries and illnesses. I tend to focus more on the injury side. It's unusual to have a occupational illness reported, but they do have it. So I tend to think of it as injury reporting, but it's not injuries and related. Now, this is really important because one of the points I want to make in this presentation, hugely important, there is an enormous difference between an OSHA recordable incident and a workers' compensation claim. You can have a $1 million workers' compensation claim. This is likely, but you could have $1 million workers' compensation claim that doesn't go on the own. What if you had an employee submit a claim and let's say it's a couple of $100,000. Now, you are disputing the fact that that claim was work-related, but in the meantime, this employee is paid and his medical needs are taken care of. But 2 years later, your work comp carrier comes back and says, well, we determined that that claim is not work-related. Remember, you were to report work-related incidents. If somebody determines that that incident is not work-related, irrespective of the fact that it was filed as a work comp claim, it's not reportable. So, very important. We don't care about, as far as this is concerned, we don't care about anything on the work comp side, unless somebody says it's not work-related. And how many of you have ever gotten into those disputes? Is this or is it not work all the time? Right? So please remember that. Okay, the scope of the standard, the scope of the record keeping standard applies to employers with more than 10 employees. Now, there are some employers that don't have to keep records at all. CCIG could have 50,000 employees, and by virtue of the business that CCIG is in, we don't have to keep OSHA logs. So certain industries are exempt. The industries that are not exempt, you are required to have more than 10 people in order to keep the law. Now, if you're exempt, if you have less than 10, you have to comply with every other OSHA requirement. I've had many a small business say, hey, I've got 8 people. That means I'm exempt from OSHA. No, it means you're exempt from the record keeping aspect. This is why I make the point that employers and specifically listed, quote unquote, low hazard retail, finance, insurance businesses are not subject to record keeping. And I just took a screenshot. It's appendix A. You gotta love, this is so legal. It's appendix A to subpart B. Well, it's just, hopefully you're going to filter through all the gobbledygook and get to a place. So again, this is not the comprehensive list. You'll see it scrolls on and on from there. So I would encourage you, when you have questions, to go to the website and look at this stuff so you can familiarize yourself to a greater extent. I'm not going to pull up the website and scroll through all this stuff. We're going to touch on it and give you the ability to go back. At that point already, even for the businesses that aren't required to keep logs, it's a way that you can monitor your safety. Right? We have the OSHA, or we have the work comp experience modification rating. That's an excellent way to gauge the success of your safety program from a work comp standpoint. From a incident rate standpoint, even if you're not subject to it, if you filled out the log, if you're not required to do, you can benchmark yourself because there is data to compare to your business. All right. Let's take a look at the forms, but more importantly, the criteria for what you put out in. You are required to report work-related injuries and illnesses. This involves work-related activity in a work environment that results in injury or illness. Another point is, and this is the one, aggravation of pre-existing conditions. How many of you have heard that phrase, aggravation? How many of you are personally aggravated by aggravation of pre-existing? Exactly. The problem here is you have an employee who comes to work for you, and because of laws that prevent you from asking or knowing, the employee that you hired for a heavy physical job had 4 prior backs over the course of its 15 years of work. Without the ability of doing background checks and knowing that, you hire that individual who suffers their 5th back injury a week after you've employed. That's your life. One of the things that is a separate subject not to be discussed today is we will plan on offering a workshop that I have sarcastically named How to Avoid Hiring Your Next Workout. And there are things and techniques you can do that are legal that can help make you less of the target. And you'll be interested in to avoid hiring. That's what. The first thing that I would put at the top of that list, just to take it a little bit of the way, don't hire. All right. So what is the work environment? The work environment is your place of business where one or more employees are working, or a place where your people are present in a work environment. So you're a factory, obviously in your facility. If you're a contractor, it's on any job site, or if it's between 2 job sites in the middle of the day that they might be going to. Incidentally, we've gotten much better from a safety standpoint. Some of the old-time safety people in the room know that over the years we faded, which is important. We used to kill about 20,000 people in the country every year on the job. I think the number's down around 4,500. Somebody may have more accurate info to be. And we kind of plateaued. So you can say we got better, but if you're one of the 4,500, that's it. So we are getting better, which is a good point. All right. These are really important. There are exceptions to the work environment. If any of these things happen, they are not reportable. Number one, somebody is present and injured when they are in your place of business as part of the general public. Example, I borrowed the tool from Nate. I'm done with the tool. I want to return the tool to Nate, but I'm not scheduled to work that day. So I get in my car and I drive to the plant to give Nate my tool back. I'm in the plant, but not on the clock. I'm not there working. And I slip and fall on the way to give my tool to Nate. That was not a reportable event. Voluntary participation in company activities. Opinion. Somebody organizes a company event. It's not paid. You're not forced to be there. If you're there enjoying the festivities, you get burned. Stop reporting. If an employee at work is injured while eating, drinking, or cooking, that's not reporting. You're in the restaurant business, hospitality business. So if my cook gets burned, does that mean that I don't know? This would be people cooking for themselves, not for an entire. Injured while performing personal tasks at work. Whatever that means, if it's not work-related, it's personal task, you can let your mind wander, we kind of creepy. But anyway, if they're injured performing some personal task at work, it's not reportable. You know, you read through this, it's like, somebody actually take your reportable. Injured while grooming or taking medication. Now, I'm a committed safety professional, and I would never want to be injured while I'm grooming. So you can tell what I've done to eliminate the hazard of grooming. Recommended for revenue. You never do. This is good to know. Self-inflicted injuries. You know, back in the old days when even before my time, even before when I was born in 1932, this kind of stuff was happening before that. But people would literally amputate a finger in a machine shop because that fingertip is worth a certain amount of money. And if it can be proven that you intentionally did that, you're denied your comp, and obviously OSHA, it would not be an ISO. It's something. I mean, if you've been in the safety business long enough, you've seen it all. Sad story, but one of my clients in Chicago was a tuck pointing contractor, and crazy story. You know what a swing state scaffold is? And the scaffolding that go on the outside of the building? It was the end of the shift, and this employee who obviously had personal problems, on the way down on the side of the building, the one employee stopped his motor. Well, the other employee had to stop his motor too. Otherwise, swing stage goes crooked. Well, he stopped his motor, took his harness off, 15th floor, and did a swan dive off the railing scaffold. You can imagine how freaked out his co-worker. An example of a suicide at work, not working. And it's sad because the family's like, well, the stress of this job was what caused him to jump off this. Just story. I want to hear excellent stories. Maybe that's why. Here's a really important point. Who determines if something goes on the law? Ultimately. And based on the facts you've been given, you make a determination. If you strongly suspect fraud, and you can document the reasons why you suspect fraud, you have the ability to say, I'm not going to put that incident on my incident. Now, the catch-22 is if you start doing that with everything, and you can't provide documentation as to why you made that determination, OSHA will issue citations for falsifying the records. I would encourage you to take an active role in deciding what goes on the bar. If you can't tell, I kind of get into what I do. and what I know and the advice I can provide. And I would offer any of you in the room an opportunity to call me. We can hash out a case that you were trying to decide if it should go on the log or not. And I will happily do that, even if you're not a client, for free. Because it really upsets me when I see people not fill out the log correctly, putting themselves at risk by doing so. So if you have a case you want to talk about, keeping it long. But it's you determine what goes on the log and what doesn't. All right, travel-related injuries. So this, as you can imagine, as people in all kinds of different lines of work, all these questions come up. So it is valuable that OSHA help define these situations. So if you have an employee who is traveling out of town, which many of us do, meetings, work, whatever it might happen to be, if your employee is injured from non-work related activities at a hotel, they slip and fall, getting out of the shower, it's not a recordable event. Even though they're required to be out of town on work, it's kind of viewed like they're at that period of time. If the employee is injured going from the hotel in a rental truck to the job, recordable. Same things if your employees are commuting to work, involved in a motor vehicle accident, not OSHA. The next one, injuries sustained as a result of a personal detour of a reasonably direct route of travel are not reported. There's a whole lot of words. Anybody want me to do some other with that might be? No. Still not reported. Doesn't matter whose vehicle, it's the situation in which they now. Difference being, if they reported to job site A in a company truck, and now they're at job site A, they have to go to job site B, that is reported. Brett, that's actually brilliant because that's what that sentence means. So let me give an example. They have to get gas. They're going from job site A to job site B. If they pull off the road at the nearest gas station, that's a reasonable detour from the correct route. If they know a barbecue place that's 10 miles east and they've got time and they take the detour, now who in the world is going to do an accident investigation? Maybe you would. I don't know. But if you take an unreasonable detour because you had to get to this place that you love the tacos, you love the barbecue, then it's not reportable. That's what that is. You think this might be important these days, working from home because of remote work? Man. So years ago, I mean, people have been working from home for a long time, but it was on steroids during COVID, and there has been a lingering effect where many companies are now allowing people to work remotely. So we have to answer the question, no, we're working, what happens if they get hurt in the home? It's a great question, right? So if the injury occurs because of a condition in the home itself or poor housekeeping practices in the home, then those injuries are not reported. So OSHA finally got a clue and said, well, we're not going to make employers responsible for conducting safety inspections in people's homes and then applying corrective action to correct hazards in the home. So that is not reportable. What is reportable is, well, if you've got people doing a lot of data entry at home, what's a hazard associated with data entry? Carpal tunnel. So an incident like that would likely be reported. Somebody bent over to pick up a box of files, work files that they had. Now, the problem is you're not there overseeing them. You don't know if they picked up, you don't know if they planted a tree in the backyard or claim that they picked up the box of files. Can't help you there other than other programs that we could talk about that make that less likely. So everything we talk about goes off in tangents. Big question about home belief. All right. So let's talk about what a recordable event is. Top of the list, death. Matter of fact, on the OSHA 300 form, one of the boxes to check is death. I sincerely hope we never have it. Horrible, horrible situation. Yeah, he's talking about somebody earlier. I think in my career, directly and indirectly, I've had to deal with 3-4 dozen fatalities, maybe over the years. Do this in 4 years, and I can't think of one. I can't think of one that wasn't preventable. And I mean preventable. Oh, really? You know, I've never had a fatality where the chunk of blue ice fell out of the Southwest toilet and crushed somebody's skull in a work situation. I mean, those things, as odd as they are, they do happen, but I've never personally experienced. So when people say a work is something that's unanticipated and unpreventable, sorry. That either, you know, if somebody loses time, and we're gonna define this in much greater detail because there are rules for each of these. Somebody loses time because of work-related injury, that goes on the log. But there's criteria. An injury that results in restrictions in work activity, that goes on. Injuries that result in medical treatment. We're going to define what medical treatment is. Because not all injuries go on the law, as we know. Injuries resulting in medical treatment go on the law. Somebody loses consciousness, that goes on. Workload. So if somebody, well, I'll give you an example. And then the last one is a significant injury or illness that's diagnosed by a physician or licensed health. So you might look at the last bullet point and go, well, Gary, if it was a significant injury or illness diagnosed, it would always result in lost work days or restrictions or medical treatment, right? They have the secret. You can have an event. Exactly. So the best example I can give that you often see on a lot, well, I would say often, but that sometimes see on hearing loss. You get medical treatment for hearing loss. You're not doing surgery. You're not getting medicine, but it's an event that doesn't result in lost work days, restrictions, it goes on the law. So there are situations for that. This is really important. When you report lost work days and restricted work days, it's the physician that determines those lines. So, the other employee who says, I got hurt on the job today, and, I went home, I got hurt on the job yesterday, went home, not feeling like I can make it to work. I think I'm going to be off at least today, maybe tomorrow. Is that going to law? Why not? Nope, nobody said that he could have done it. So it's the physician that makes that determination. So how about another situation? You send your employee to an occupational clinic And I will probably repeat this over and over and over again. How many of you have a solid relationship with an occupation? Hugely important. How many of you have return to work programs? So if you have a return to work program and you don't have a solid relationship with your clinic, you need to get together and tell that clinic, we will bring an employee back to work. We will accommodate any restriction you might apply. This is really, really important. You can help your OSHA law with a relationship with a clinic. Anybody want to raise their hands and agree with what I'm saying as far as that relationship? It's really important. We had a workshop on it. Exactly. You make it so easy for somebody to get in the car or the truck and take them to the clinic. You don't want to send somebody to the clinic on their own. Hey, you look hurt pretty bad, but we got a clinic relationship. Why don't you get in the car and drive yourself? I had a demolition contract. He's employed. He was a foreman. And this is a good quality contractor. He fell into a pile of metal, cut his forehead. He's bleeding into his eye, got the car and drove himself to the clinic. Anyway, an employee gets hurt at 7:05 this morning, right after they get to work. They go to the clinic and say, hey, look, you're not going back to work today, but you can be back tomorrow. He suffered a 1-day lost workday event, didn't he? No. You only start counting the next day. The day of the injury doesn't always remember. Same thing with restrictions. When you have an employee who's hurt on January 1st or 2nd, somebody's good. They get hurt on January 2nd, bad enough that they miss the entire year. And limit the number of days either lost or restricted or total lost and restricted to 100 days. Never put more than 180 days in any one injury. Now that can carry over to a different year, but you always stop that counting when the combination from days lost 1 year to another reaches another year. Right? Correct. Yep. Or a carryover. They get hurt in December and it carries over into 2024. Never want to put an injury on two separate logs. So if the injury occurred in 23 December, if you put the injury there, this person's still losing time. At some point, when the person stops losing time or they reach the 180, you go back to the 23 log and update the dose. That's how I became a blitz. You don't have an opportunity to bring them back on like me. They quit. I'm stopping the bleeding. Anybody else saying? This changed years ago. It used to be that OSHA would allow an employer to only count the days that employee is scheduled to work. And now we count calendar days. So that's why they capped it at 180. Before, the employer would look at the schedule and only count lost work days and restricted days according to what the employee's schedule was. But what OSHA found out was in a lot of cases, it was really weird, but these employees weren't scheduled to work for 2 months. So in the old days, we did all that creative record keeping, and OSHA kind of figured out what creative record keeping meant, which is why they went down. So holidays count, vacation days count, calendar makes it easy. Yep. Why they capped it 20? Because if they didn't cap it, then it would look statistically like the severity of injuries is now off the charts, right? Because you account weekends, holidays, everything else. So they had to come to account. All right. Kind of made this point already. Days away from work. You mark that box. There's 4 columns. Yeah. Days away from work. Restricted work activity. Other reported. 4 shaded. We'll look at the pictures. Start counting on the day after. Only count what the physician says. So, unfortunately, if the physician says employee needs to be off, this is why that relationship has been back to. The employee feels as though they're capable of returning to work and genuinely believe this individual, but the physician says need to be off for 2 weeks. Number one, that's kind of a problem. But if the physician says off work for 2 weeks and the guy shows up tomorrow, you can't say that he's not losing time. Can't say that. What? Follow my logic. So even though the employee comes back to work, that physician said needs to be off. That is why that relationship is so important with the clinic. And you need to have a conversation. And if that employee tells the physician I need to be off, I mean, obviously there are times where it may not be recommended, but usually these employees are pretty good about knowing what's going on. Well, exactly. Restricted work, same thing as lost time, with the exception of this. And this is really big work. You have somebody who does quality control, which basically means they go around the factory or job site doing inspections of the work. They don't do the work itself. They suffered a slip and fall, soft tissue injury on the job, and they go to the clinic, and the restrictions come back for this quality control inspector, no lifting over 50 pounds. No lifting over 50. This quality control inspector, who doesn't pick up the tool, who doesn't pick up the materials. Did you have any thoughts about that? That's exactly right. Did everybody hear the answer? So number one, if those restrictions don't apply, I go back to that relationship again. What Brett suggested is that your occupational clinic have a job description. You're going to have opportunities to bring that person back on light duty. But if the restriction doesn't apply, if it doesn't apply to the work they do, if you had a release form that said that, you would not put that on your law. If the restrictions don't apply to what that person does, it doesn't. That can happen. I've seen that briefly. The worst abuse I've ever seen was an electrical contractor, commercial, who had a great safety program. And he was one of these people that was too honest. I mean, he was wrong. I shouldn't say too honest. I looked at his law, and the first thing that caught my attention was where you have to enter the number of lost work days. He had written 1/2. Like, Kevin, what is 1/2 for like 6 entries on your law? And he said, well, Gary, anytime you send an employee to the clinic, at least in Chicago, they're jam-packed. It takes forever to get to see the doctor. He goes, I sent him to the clinic. They lose a half a day of work. I said, Kevin, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You just put on the law that you had 6 lost workday events by not using the rules correctly. So just try to make points. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Right. Brent just brought up an excellent point. I'm gonna pop up a copy of the OSHA law. But how many of you are familiar with the law since this is what you do? How many are not? Okay, so that's good. So when we get to the law, we're going to see 4 columns. That days away from work, restricted, and other benefits. So if an employee suffered both lost work days and restricted work days, this is interesting. And it does say on the form, you were to only check the box with the most serious outcome, which would be lost work days. Because if you inadvertently check both, when you run your totals, especially if you do this on an Excel spreadsheet, it will double that injury. You just now double count it. Double the incidents because you're only supposed to check mark one time. Oh yeah. No. No. So and what you just the question was, he got hurt today, but wasn't scheduled to work, Thursday, Friday, and then had the weekend off. It counts. Here's what happens, and this happens with your clinics. They get hurt on a Friday. So I'm answering your question, but also giving you another scenario with the same thinking about it. He goes to see the clinic on Friday, and the doctor says, when are you scheduled to work next? Because they're trying to figure out it. They don't know the record keeping rules. Some do, many don't. So they get hurt on Friday. Doctor says, when are you scheduled to work next? Monday. So the doctor's release says employee may return to work on Monday. That means Saturday and Sunday couldn't go to work. Oh, he wasn't scheduled to. He couldn't. That's what the doctor said. You just incurred a 2-day lost work day event. You know how many times I've looked at a log and I've seen check mark lost work day, and how many days were lost? 1. And then the employee goes back to work on full duty. Are you kidding me? Again, that's a problem with the clinic. It was so bad. He had to miss the next day. But then the next day he was fine. He'd go back to full duty. That's the suspicions needed. That's a conversation that we need to have with the clinic. Don't do it. Your doctor, if he felt that your employee was well enough to return to work tomorrow on a day he wasn't scheduled to work, that's how that release needs to be written. Otherwise, you created the documentation that puts you at risk. Exactly. I misunderstood. I thought the doctor's release said may return to work on Monday. Do you see where I was going though? If he puts the release out here because that's when he's scheduled to work, then you have to assume the days in between, because it's calendar days, where your student's gone. Sorry, I misunderstood. Yep. Yeah, I'd get a release in any. I mean, ideally, the doctor's release says can return to work without restrictions immediately. Bless you. Is everybody okay with the catch-up? Because this comes up all the time. So medical treatment. Medical treatment is specifically defined. Basically, there's a list of first aid. We're going to go through the list of first aid. If the treatment that was given, the facility, is one of the items in the first aid list, it's not recorded. So it's on the list, and that's what they did. It's not medical treatment. So first aid is using a non-prescription medication at non-prescription slang. Prescription medication is what and the contractors in the room are sensitive to this because they know all about it. If a doctor prescribes medication, that is automatically reported. Just the way it is. So there is prescription strength ibuprofen, which I think is 400 to 800 total. And over the counter is 400. So it's double the non-prescription dosage. What happened in the old days when we were more involved in creative record keeping that I mentioned before, we would tell the clinic that these are the rules. This is how we can work them out. I'm just being honest. We would tell the clinic, the treated employees, hey, look, you don't have to give them, Vicodin or other narcotic type painkillers, but could you just tell the guy to take ibuprofen and double the dose? That's what people did to avoid the hit out of nose. So OSHA caught on to that too. That's where this movie. But you have to have that conversation with your clinic. Why would clinics prescribe medication that's dispensed from their own pharmacy to people in town? And the work comp system isn't like group health. It's okay. There's nobody who says, oh, well, wait a minute. Nope, it pays. So once again, it's a conversation you should be having with your occupation. On tetanus or other types of immunizations, not reported. Now, the cut they got that required stitches that caused the tetanus shot, stitches are reportable. Cleaning, flushing, soaking wounds, just cleaning things up, applying bandages, even steri strips to close the wound, not reportable. Out of full therapy, elastic bandages to support and partially immobilize a limb, not reportable. One that's always interested me is, because I kind of think that's kind of a medical treatment, it is to drill a fingernail or toenail to relieve blood pressure. I mean, you don't just pull out the DeWalt with a 1/4-inch bit, but yeah. And reportable. It's strange, it's that sound. Using eye patches. Somebody wants to look like a pirate, not reportable. Removing foreign bodies from the eye, just flushing it out, or using a cotton swab, not reportable. The issue that comes up with eye injuries is they will oftentimes prescribe a salve that goes in the eye to reduce the irritation. And, I hate to say it, but you've had an eye injury and the prescription is going to help the eye. I'm not going to argue about that. Anybody know the other remedies or objects in the eye? Scrub, magnetic needs. You want me to advance? Want me to advance in treatment? I do this. I do this when I train frontline workers to get their attention. I show a picture of a nail that went into somebody's eye. I actually had a foreman tell me, he had a glass eye, and he explained, I was teaching an OSHA 10 hour, and he said, I used to hate safety glasses, and I'd never wear them. I'm counting 60 any nails, and I'll be damned that nail could come back and like halfway to his eye. And he told the class, his instinct was to pull the nail from the eye, but when he did, he actually had the eye dislocated, and it was still connected to all the nerves and muscles, and he was looking at the eye on the nail, and the most powerful thing is what he told the class, he goes, ever since that accident happened, nobody has ever seen me without a pair of safety glasses on. I'm thinking, no shit, you're down to one eye. It's a hell of a way to get religion, isn't it? So, you get somebody who has debris in the eye, the next level up there is like a dental pick. They actually go picking the object out of the eye. And then if it's deeply embedded and it's oxidized, anybody know what they do then? They drill. Drill, baby, drill. I'd like to be sitting there with a dental drill going into your eyeball. Now, yeah, it's like chug the bottle of whiskey. If you don't give me something for the pain, or put me under, I'll do it myself, right? Finger guards, massages, or drinking fluids for heat stress. Somehow I suspect that an IV booster heat stress is going to be considered affordable. Put a needle in somebody's arm, even though that's what they do in extreme cases, it's going to be. If it isn't on that list, and they went to a clinic for more than this observation, chances are 99.9% the treatment that was given makes it reportable. Loss of consciousness, work-related, and a large mechanical contractor, client of mine, pipe fitters went down, lost consciousness, and we walked through the case. The sharp safety guy, he wanted to do the right thing. Said, I don't know what to do here. And so I just thought, I said, Mark, was it unusually hot in the work environment? Was he working in a confined space? No. What turned out happening was that this individual suffered from extremely low blood pressure and got dizzy and lost consciousness. Well, that's a personal injury. It was nothing in the work environment that, from a medical standpoint, that aggravated that. So that was it. Needle sticks, sharps, most typically applies in the healthcare setting. You have to, this is really interesting to me. Yeah, it makes no sense. In a medical setting, anytime you can stick yourself with a needle, potentially not a sterile needle, one that's already fitted somebody, that becomes a reportable event. In a medical setting, emergency medicine specialist, if the worker is actually splashed with blood or body fumes, and it even gets in their mouth, that doesn't go on the log until they're diagnosed. You can stick yourself with a needle, and that automatically, irrespective of outbound, goes on the log. But if you're splashed with a pint of blood, we're not going to put it on the log. So let us get said. It's like, okay, this doesn't everything sing its thing. How many of you would like to break? Oh, going to be that place. I can't talk. So why don't we come back in less than 10 minutes? Order. All right, hearing loss. We talked briefly about hearing loss. Has to be diagnosed by a physician or licensed healthcare professional. And I have about that because I came from Illinois, and veterinarians are licensed healthcare professionals. So according to the OSHA standards, it would be acceptable to send your injured employee to a veterinarian. And some of you may feel like it would be more appropriate to send your worker to a veterinarian. That's so Hearing loss is reportable if they suffer a threshold shift that exceeds 25 decibels. Retesting employees, if you have a program like this, they see a threshold shift, you can retest the employee to verify that the first test is accurate. Oftentimes what happens is people will schedule an audiogram for Monday morning, and this employee just got back to a two-day trip to a gun site training range where they were firing. They're going to have a temporary hearing loss, and the idea is to be quiet before you have your audio. So, forms. We've got a 300 log, we've got the 300A, we've got the 301. This kind of came into play with another topic I can talk about. How many of you complete the OSHA 301 form? Okay to do that. OSHA's rule says that if you have a state first report of injury form, that can be used in lieu of the three of them. However, when we come full circle, come back to this new reporting requirement, not all state forms have the data that comes off the 301. So, I'm sure this was done to in this. So, anyway, OSHA 300 form. This is what I screenshotted it, and I'm not smart enough to be able to condense everything, so I did it this way. Employee's name, job title, date of injury, where the event occurred, column out. This is where most people make a mistake. If I put in this column below guard, that's a violation. Guys, this requires that you describe the injury or illness, the part of the body that was affected, and the object and substance that directly injured or make it worse. So, employee fractured arm falling from ladder. That would be a complete description. But I've seen many people abbreviate that column. And believe it or not, as long as I've been doing this, I have seen just two instances where OSHA wanted to make a point. In one case, the owner got what they deserved because they did everything they could to aggravate their compliance officer. That's not a good CCIG. You don't have to do that because these people have the ability to issue citations. And they issued citations for not having a complete disclosure. This is the column that we've been talking about. Classify the case. Death, days away from work, job transfer restriction, or other reporting. Only one check mark. Because if you put one in days away from work, one in job transfer restriction, you double count it. 308 form, if you use the Excel spreadsheet, it transfers all these things over. Otherwise, you can do it by hand, by coding the column. Yes. Yeah. And then on the 300A, probably the most important thing on this form, well, I'll make a point. Another point. The most important thing is your NAICS code. We're going to delve into that more deeply. But to jump ahead to make sure I don't forget, your business may be involved in doing multiple things. And each of those multiple things has a separate NAICS code. As an example, Beth works for a contractor that does painting, drywall, and framing. Each of those has its own NAICS code. The incident rates that are associated with each of those codes are different. If you pick the NAICS code that has the lowest incident rate, even though you're doing other things, you're creating a bar that's more difficult for you, or a goal that's more difficult for you to accomplish. So my recommendation is wherever you have multiple codes and you do all that work that are represented by those multiple codes, you always want to pick the NAICS code that has the highest incident rate. How many are joining with what I'm trying to do? Because you're creating a goal that's more difficult for you to achieve by picking the loan rate because you're doing more hazardous things. And that's important because in that field right there, you're telling OSHA what you do. They'll look at the benchmark rate for that and they'll compare your incidents. And if you're slightly above, that puts you in a bad position. Had you used the more dangerous hazardous code, you might be lower than that rate. Like the building. Nope. Work comp classification codes. But the same thing works on work comp. Let's say you need trim carpentry and training, glove training. The trim carpentry code is the less expensive rate because of the hazards involved. But now when they're calculating your experience mod, if you're doing 99% training, your experience mod is going to be way over one. Nope. Don't talk to me. That what? We got the answer. Any other questions? This is really important. Here's the OSHA 301. We're gonna fly by it. So other requirements, multiple establishments. Some businesses have multiple establishments. If a place is to be in business for more than 1 year, including a job site, by the way, you have people in job site, then you need to maintain a separate log for each of those locations. But it's 1 year. The exemption for all of this, except for electronic record keeping, the exemption for keeping records, period, is total number of employees. So here's where I'm going. You own a chain of 10 convenience stores. Each store has 8 employees. OSHA says you need to keep a log at each facility because the total operation has more than. Make sense? They have a technical rule. Ideally, you should have the log available at the location where you're required to maintain a log. But OSHA will allow you to have it electronically and furnish it with it. I can't relatively quick. Ideally, you should keep the data and be able to print it or show the dorm. All right. Which employees are covered by OSHA record keeping? Well, here's the list. I'll focus on one and probably need to add another bullet point at the end of what we want to do, right? So executive, hourly, salaried employees. Let me make this point right down. When you fill out your OSHA 300A form, you're getting ready to complete your logs for the year. You're going to go to payroll and you're going to say, give me the hours worked in 2023. What are you potentially missing? Salaried employees. Because payroll they don't have records on salary because you don't keep hours. So when you do your total number of hours, you go to payroll, you get the total hours worked along with the overtime that was worked, and then you need to add in the time worked by the salaried employees. The easiest way to do that is to multiply the number of salaried employees that you had during the year and multiply it by 2,000. That's the standard hours. Now, OSHA does say, are there any salaried employees that work a 40-hour work week? Don't raise your hand at your bosses. Right? So I've seen people do this, creative record keepers. Well, everybody here is working like 60 hours a week, so I'm going to put 60 hours down for each salary, which actually you can do, but there's one condition: documentation. He's got documentation. So go with the 2,000 hours, but don't forget to include the salaried hours, because when you do the calculation, the less hours, the higher your incidence. Seasonal, part-time, migrant workers, and then the last bullet point is all directly supervised workers, including temp employees. If you hire temp employees, and you don't hire a supervisor from the temp agency to supervise that temp workforce, their injuries and their hours to be included on your law. That gets into a really gray area because the temp agency is handling the comp. And the temp agency is going to be the one to determine if they come back on light duty or not. So just be aware of that. The other bullet point that may be needed to be addressed in the future is going to be independent contractors, as I mentioned. The Department of Labor has this 6-part test, and they don't tell you how everything is graded. That's why we have to wait for the case law to take it out. That OSHA could come in because they're a part of the Department of Labor and say, well, we think that 1099 employee that was hurt at your facility badly enough to be hospitalized is your employer that's going to be gone. You just can't answer enough questions right now because so temp workers are definitely yours if you supervise them on a day-to-day basis. So the weird thing is some temp agencies keep logs. So we're really kind of polluting the data that the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects, because you can have a big factory that uses temp workers that are including them on their log, and the temp agency is including or reporting them on their log. So it's being reported twice in the same way. It just suggests you work those guys out with the temp agency. All right, talked about the other day. The 308 form, I've seen violations, citations for this too. The 308 form should be signed by the highest ranking official at the location. So, personally, let me ask you a question. Why do you think OSHA wants the highest ranking official signing an OSHA 300? But some people won't say something. Less likely, but there actually is a legitimate reason, but unfortunately OSHA has not done a good job executing on the reason. Again, here's the reason. And I'll tell you, and obviously, many of you probably understand this and understand the reason. The reason that they want the highest ranking official is because that person oversees the operation. And OSHA wants that person to be aware of what's going on in their operation. The problem is, if you look at the 308 form, did you see anywhere where it told you to calculate the incident rates and compare them to your peer group? They got raw data with no context, and you give it to the executive and you say, here, sign this law. It doesn't accomplish the purpose that OSHA had intended, and that's partially on OSHA for not including that data. So you, as a person responsible for the launch, when you present that to the executive, this is my opinion, he should calculate the incident rates, just have this conversation, calculate the incident rates, compare it to your peer group, and let the executive know where you stand. And my suggestion is, if you're the safety director and your incident rate is below the peer group, ask for a raise. And on the other hand, if the incident rate is above the peer group, ask for a raise because you need more money to work harder to help get that incident rate down. So for the safety people in this room, I'm with you on 2 accounts. Raises either direction. Of course, I think I already did an email. It's not here if I forget. So this is really important because safety is driven from the top down, or should be. And anybody in a position of authority is communicating the message down through the ranks. The only way an executive can help support the effort in safety is to understand what's happening. And presenting a 308 form with raw data in it to somebody beside is a joke. But I have seen where somebody other than the executive signs the form and OSHA's issued a citation. So there's a reason. Posting theory, you have to put it up by February 1. Post it, the 308 form. Again, who's going to know what that data is without incident rates? It's ridiculous. So we're posting a form that has a bunch of raw data, no context, and you got to post it for employees so you are going to have a clue what it really means. Crazy. How many of you communicate your incident rates to the field and let them know what the safety is? It's just important for the workers to know that too, right? You have to keep it up until April 30th. Most people just leave it up for the full year. We used to, in the old days, we used to put, actually, it was the OSHA law. Then they came up with the 200 log, and they came up with the 300 log. We used to post the OSHA log in its entirety with people's names on it. Which, okay, here's my logic. Are most accidents caused by the deplorable conditions and tools and equipment you provide your employees with, or actions that the employees take? Yeah. So our challenge, right, is to change, identify, change, that's the unsafe behaviors, right? Used to be, I don't even get political, but anymore these days, you don't know what you can say. It used to be that shame was a good thing in society. And by posting a person's name, it was embarrassing to that individual. And I'm not saying I agree with that approach now. Many used to do that. Because if somebody was on that log, maybe the next time they think about what they were doing, or they just keep, oh, that's another risk. I did. Updating, you do have to update. You talked about that situation already. Well, here, first of all, this was always an interesting one. I'll go into a client, say, and in June, July, August, whatever. It's got to be declared. Well, not because I'm an inspector. I'm just curious what they're doing for the safety. And I say, well, hey, Dare Bear, I don't do my OSHA logs till January. And I'll say, well, that's kind of a problem, because if OSHA came in and you told them exactly what you just told me, believe it or not, I even know of a story where they had no injuries, but hadn't officially opened an OSHA log for the year. And I was not involved in this. They were given a citation. It's like the reward for a job well done. We haven't had any injury. Well, I'm going to have to issue a citation because you don't have a blank log opened up for you. Well, that's wrong. That's the way they've not heard respect. So you are required to enter onto the log within 7 business days of your knowledge of a reported event. So if the employee comes back to you and said, oh, hey, by the way, a couple of weeks ago, I amputated my right arm. I noticed that you're not in violation for not having reported that on the law. It's when you received them. So, and you can put stuff on the law, hey, you can take it up. Remember what I said? Somebody gets hurt, and we go to the clinic, and we start treating, and through whatever way somebody found out, it was determined that that injury is not reportable, comes off the launch. We're done, you can take it. Your responsibility. If OSHA shows up at the door, you are required to be able to furnish 5 prior years, complete years, plus the current. And electronic formats are accepted, as is electronic. We talked about this before too. If you have an injury in December that carries over into the next year, you never want to open a second injury on the year, the next year. You can always go back to the year in which the injury occurred. Could be taking it off entirely, could be adding more loss and restricted. No. Great question, Brett. They don't give you the opportunity, which actually probably works in competitive, because the assumption would be that, well, I mean, if it came off the log, then you're hurt. And even though you don't want the inspection to happen, that's a conversation you can have with the compliance officer. And actually, you know what? If something came off the lawn and you had an inspection, I would bring that up. Documentation, doubting of documentation. Change in ownership, believe it or not, but you sell a company, the OSHA history transfers. Well, that's given to the new owners, and new owners would be held responsible for not having collected that information in the course of the sale. Probably the last thing that's done from a due diligence point in the sale of the company is the anonymous safety first, right? All right, let's jump into electronic. This is where it gets really, really good. I think some of that's types. Be about cynical. How many people feel more cynical than only can get? Right? Anyway, if you are one of those businesses that must complete a law, it's more than 10, right? And you are in an industry that is required to maintain OSHA, because CCIG is not. 150 employees were not required to keep it. If you are required to keep a log and have more than 250 employees, then you are required to go to the website, establish an account, and report the data from your 300 page. Pretty good with that so far? That's the only information. FBOs, actually, you don't have an account. I'm sure there's name of business, location of business. There's basic information about the business. But only the data from the 300 days. It's where it gets complicated. But let's take a look at the. If you're under 250 and then another number, or 20, and you're in Appendix A, Appendix A to Subpart E, Part 19. We've 20 and 250, or over 20, I'm sorry, then you are required to report electronic. So they have identified another list of what they refer to is hazardous designated industries. I've seen it referred to as high hazard industries, and I kind of wondered who made that decision. But this is the part that should get your attention. And I'm going to get back into some more detail. If you have more than 20, you are required to report electronically. Then we have another level of 100. This thing's all over. I wish I had a flow chart. We had a key one. So if you have more than 250 employees and you're in an industry that's required to keep logs, you have to go to the electronic website, submit the data. If you have more than 20 employees and you are in this list of industries that continues to scroll, more than 20, then you are required to report the information from the 300 table. Location. They want to know the information by location. So isn't that confusing? When we talk about multiple establishments, it's all the employees all together at every establishment to determine if you need to keep a record. For electronic reporting, it's by location. If anyone would like to make this subject more complicated, I'd be happy to contact the labor. I'm going to make an effort. I'll be back. Here's the point I'm trying to make. These are the NAICS codes with more than 20 that require you to file electronically. Anybody in the construction industry, anybody in manufacturing, anybody in wholesale trade, anybody in agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. Every code, and there's multiple codes that fall underneath construction. We've got electrical contractors, painting contractors, we've got excavation contractors. The point is this: if you're in construction, manufacturing, wholesale trade, if you have more than 20, you're required to report it. Questions? I took you had to call to the floor. You already went through less than 10, no requirement to maintain a log, regardless of what you do. 10 to 19 employees, you can keep paper or digital log. There is no requirement to file. You have between 10 and 20. 18, I get no requirement to file electronically. If you have more than 20 employees and you're included in that Appendix A, then you must submit information by March 2nd, 2024 from your 3 other. Anyone at any one time within the. Correct. Yes. Exactly. And as I mentioned before, Appendix A that we looked at, NAICS code 23, and these things go out 6 digits. 23 is for anybody in construction. So if you're anybody in construction and have more than 1, we have same thing in manufacturing, same thing. We're going to show you how to. You know that more than 250 employees and you're required to maintain a log. That information, 300A form only. Yeah. This is the new requirement. It gets even more common. If you fall into yet another appendix, then, and you have more than 100 employees, you are required to file information from the 308 form, like everybody else, the 300 log, and the 301 form. This is new. This is different. So Now we're talking about 50s, 1904. So this is another appendix. And then you go to the record keeping standing. This is all there. This is a little bit more unique. They have further defined the industries that they want to see data. And I focus, let me get back. I've got another slide coming up that explains these impacts. So thankfully, Beth furnished me, because I don't have an account, with screenshots of what this form is going to look like that you will have if you are part of those businesses. That appendix with more than 100 employees at any time during the year. Case number, that's column A, using people to start 1, 2, 3. The job title of the person, the date of the injury, makes sense. Where the event occurred, you're providing detail. No name. Describe the injury or illness. Just that description that we found in that 1 hour. This is all data, but this is 5 specific injuries, not aggregate. Describe what that injury involved, days away from work, job transfer, reporting it. The number of lost days for that particular injury and restriction, the type of injury or illness that it was, this is interesting, the employee state that they were hired. Oh, date of birth. Interesting. Although you don't tie it to the main. It is. The employee state hired. Anybody know why that might be relevant from his book standpoint? Is that discussed correct? Yeah. Statistically speaking, the most likely employee to be injured by tenure are your newly hired. They actually might have some elements. This one, you know what? When I look at an injury, when I look at incident rates, do they differentiate the incident rates between the male and the female? That is no kid. It's a human being. So I really struggle with why that's relevant information. Let somebody else put. Incident. Was the employee treated in the mountains? Is the employee hospitalized overnight? You know what they might do with that data? We're going to talk about this coming up. How many people know that you have to make a phone call to OSHA? This doesn't matter what appendix you're in. And if it's an appendix rupture, that doesn't. But it doesn't matter what appendix you're in. If you're in business and you are an employee hospitalized overnight, you have to pick up the phone or make an email notification to OSHA within 24 hours of that hospitalization. So isn't that interesting? So you check that box, they can cross reference to whether or not you made a call. Exactly. Yeah, you can have an employee overnight in the hospital for observation purposes. That does not count. And we'll talk a little bit more about specifics. I told you there was a lot of stuff related to record keeping. The reporting of accidents is part of the record keeping state. Picking up the phone or email. The time the employee began work, time of event, what was the employee doing? This one's always kind of amused me. What was the employee doing just before the incident occurred? Working? Eat. Okay. Don't exactly know. We kind of know. We'll ask him what he was doing, but typically he has to be working. What happened? Tell us how the injury or illness occurred. What was the injury or illness? We had already explained that earlier. They want to go again. Same thing. What object, substance directly caused the employee to be hurt? Death. And that is the list of questions. So if you have more than 100, your business is listed in that appendix, then you are required to purchase the. I did this because this slide here gets very specific. This appendix is different than the other. So the NAICS codes that are covered by 2381, it's generally called foundation, structure, and building exterior, specifically includes these NAICS. So poured concrete, structural steel and precast, framing contractors, masonry contractors, glass, glazing, roofing, siding, and then the catch-all, other foundation stuff. We'll have to dig, because actually I think it may be the plant that would be excluded, but the installation would be covered. We'll look at that offline, because this is new and there's a zillion different codes, but it's worth taking into, because they'll make great plus. All right. So this is just a repetition of what we covered already. I understand it's confusing. I tried to find the easiest way to boil this down so that people understand. But reporting electronically, you have that one appendix that lists the industries. If you're between over 20 employees, you know you have to file electronically. If you look at the new appendix and you have more than 100 employees, you may or may not have to report the detail. What we're talking about here is a new requirement that requires you to report the detail of each incident. And again, please reach out and call them. We'll walk through it over the phone. What's your NAICS code? What's your employee count? And we can work through this if you're confused. They're an employee. No. I picked construction in particular because I knew we would have a lot of contractors here, and it was such a vague building exterior contractors. I wanted to go into detail. Noticeably absent was electric. Right. Deadlines, for whatever reason, the government agency posted March 2nd. Every year, you have to report that data electronically. Supposedly, they locked the system out. I have heard people have been able to get into the system to either correct or report the data after the deadline. Don't count. They need some experience. So the point was, that the last thing I am is an IT person, but evidently if you wait until the last day, the system can't handle that much threat. I'm about right, Norm? System can't handle. Yeah. All right. If you fail to file by the deadline, OSHA enforces their standards in citations and penalties. And how many of you know that your OSHA compliance history is readily available online? Yeah, I've done another workshop. It's called How to Survive an OSHA Inspection. Anybody interested? I know some of you have attended that. Anybody interested in how to survive an OSHA inspection? You do that too. That's another 2.5 hour workshop. All right, we already talked about posting. If you have more than 10 employees and you're in that cover group of employers, that's got to be posted somewhere where employees can see it. All right, Now, here's the bad news. Regardless, have more than 100, you're in those affected industries. You have more than 20, posting your data online, the public has access. They show you how to get them. You're going to go to the OSHA website and you'll go to the home page. You want to click Help and Receipts. You're going to get a pop-up menu right here. You're going to click Data. Okay? When the data screen comes up, you're going to click Injury Tracking Application. Got it? And again, do it now. You can do it when you get home. This is not available right now. By next week, you will have the presentation. You'll have a link to the video that you can torture. Maybe you want to torture one of your employees, and you'll require them to watch the presentation. Let me know how that turns out. It's fatal. And you will have access. What one of the people that work here, who is actually an Excel expert, has taken the spreadsheet because it was a monster spreadsheet. And there's columns of useless information on that spreadsheet. He has taken the spreadsheet into a usable format. You will have access to that spreadsheet where you can scroll, you can find your companies, you can do reporting. You won't see the detail yet because that's not required to be entered. But when you open that spreadsheet, you will see your companies and the data that you've been providing since electronic records went into effect. You might want to do some opposition research on your competitors. You have that conversation with the general contractor. You can say, oh, look at these people, or you want to look at others. We got this gas incident rate. I would have to say that it is. Yes, and you have to call on the phone. And then they'll come talk to me. Maybe I'll be. All right. So far, we click on Injury Tracking Application. This is to get your data. I'm giving you the spreadsheet anyway, but you would find the whole spreadsheet. The latest data that they have, obviously, because we haven't filed our 2020 data, is for calendar year 2022. What's going to happen is you'll see another drop-down menu pop up. This allows you to download that gigantic Excel spreadsheet. I think there's 350,000 lines. Well, lower line on Excel. Well, so you're going to see like 350,000 lines of employers and employer locations of data, 50 states. Every state has a requirement. Even though some states are state OSHA plans, every employer in those state plans must report to this state. And this is the cleaned up spreadsheet. Let's take a close look at it. You'll see the name of the entity by state. So the gentleman who helped me with the spreadsheet sorted all of the data by state and then alphabetically by state. So it'll be easier to find for you. You'll see the NAICS code, which we've been harping about this whole time. And you may want to check that against what you're really doing, see if that's the correct code. Can't go back and correct that in the past, but moving forward, you can. Basically, this gives you a description of that NAICS code. This column here includes the number of employees that you've reported in the database. This column includes the hours worked, This column is how many lost time cases we have, how many restricted duty cases we had, and how many other reportable cases. From there, we're not quite there in the presentation yet, if you calculate your incidence. Believe it or not, and this, in retrospect, I should have also had the guy that helped me calculate the incident rates using the data that's already in spreadsheets. I didn't think about it because I'm not an Excel person. Wouldn't you think the government could have included a formula to do the calculation? Because we still have to do a calculation. Now I've heard now that we do some multiplication and division, but they could have done that in these spreadsheets. If they really on their toes, they could have put the benchmark rates in for each of those having nice plus points. I've been told if we pay more in taxes, they could have. So, only up. So, this is what you're going to see from CCIG in the spreadsheet. Otherwise, you would have had a spreadsheet that's got a useless number of columns with pointless information. I tried to boil it down to exactly what you're going to need to accomplish the purposes. So by next week, you'll have a spreadsheet. No. No, absolutely not. 5 more cases. Yeah, they don't stop people over-reporting. That's a great question. That related to the question you asked earlier. So yeah, that's a great question. Another great question. Unfortunately, it's the most we have at any one time. So if you had the type of work that was done between May and August, and you had 20 employees and the rest of the year you had to, yeah, they want to know at the most they can be done. Oh, I'm sorry. Average. Yeah. Once again, look at what they've done. They've confused. Because the record keeping says the most at any one point in time, and make sure an average. Don't your feet. You can't be qualified to do it. Yeah, great catch. It does. It does. It has both. Why it doesn't have the other column, can't tell it. There's 345,000 loads. Already told that we sorted it. Doesn't provide the incident rate of benchmark data. We'll get to that. There's some weird things the record keeping saying, but may not be aware. So the record keeping standard was revised, I think it's right, maybe 10 minutes ago. Maybe 8, I don't know. Anyway, when it was revised, they included other requirements. One of those is that it's your obligation as an employer to inform your people how to report in. So if OSHA came into your place of business and interviewed employees, which they had the right to do. I'm working with a company right now who's in the middle of an OSHA. Never had one, don't know what to do, so I'm providing advice. They're allowed to talk to your employees. They could ask an employee a question. Has your employer informed you how to report things? What if they say no? How many of you include the training program? What do you know how to report things? That's documentation. That takes you off the hook. That satisfies that requirement. What happens if you don't have that documentation? And they say, you're looking at citation. So I would, and in addition to the fact that it helps you comply with an OSHA requirement, that's an hugely important part of any safety. That if your employee fails you to inform you of an injury, that's a bad deal, right? How do people game the system? Late report. But I'm telling you, got hurt on Friday, went home, got real bad. Doc says I can't come back to work for the next 3 years. That's how they game the system. So it's part of a good safety program, but it's also part of the compliance program. And you have to tell employees, believe it or not, that this should be in the policy that you communicate to your employees that they have the right to report their injuries. But OSHA's kind of interesting. They only think about the employees, right? I rephrase that. They have the right and the obligation or requirement. It's not like an occasional thing. They have the right and the requirement to report an injury. Rephrase that you communicate to your employees. This has to be the policy that employers are prohibited from firing or discriminating against an employee for reporting an injury. True or false? You can never fire an employee for something that caused an injury to them on exact. False. Absolutely false. You cannot fire an employee simply for having reported. You can absolutely fire the employee for something they did that was ridiculous and against all the rules that they betrayed that resulted. There's a unique difference. So, best practice, develop a written program that includes those elements in it, and have the employees think so. Well, that's an interesting question. So the state of Colorado allows an employee up to 10 workdays to report an injury in order for them to receive compensation. They can wait 10 days to report that amputated arm. That doesn't mean that you as an employer can insist that the injury be reported immediately. One is dealing with their compensation and the laws surrounding that. The other is addressing their employment agreement with you. Your policy should be reported. Well, that gets great, eh? That gets real great, especially with soft tissue. I think the amputated arm, you might be on solid, but I'm getting that one. We need to have system evidence, or does. So, any questions on that? You have to do that. We have to do that because that is your control. And arguably, and I think, Brent, you made this argument earlier, it's in the employee's best interest to report it immediately so it doesn't get worse. Somebody had a question? My wife says, your lips move. I think out. Anyway. It's a totally different situation, Tabor, in that the work comp laws will deny the benefits after 10 days, but you establish the rule for their employment. And to Brett's point, you may terminate an employee for not having reported it and still be on the hook for the comp. Oh, well, any other questions? All right. There's also a section, prohibition against discrimination, which I found really interesting. I agree with you. I disagree with you. This is where most of the controversial positions, when OSHA revised the record keeping standard, are concerned. OSHA claims certain activities discourage employees from reporting their injuries. And it's going to come right back to what we just talked about. Prohibited activities. Blanket post-injury drug testing. Believe it or not, OSHA says that blanket post-injury drug testing discriminates against an employee for, and prevents or discourages the reporting of an accident. I say tough. Now, there are unique situations in which some of that makes sense, but not overall. You need to be careful with your drug testing program in the sense that what they mean by blanket post-injury drug testing is, irrespective of the circumstances of the incident, you send everybody to the clinic with drug tests. That they discourage. Let me give you an example. I'm standing at a machine, and I'm not saying I agree. I'm just spelling out what they said. I'm standing at a machine, doing my job, doing my work, theoretically, doing it safely and competently. Somebody on a forklift turns a corner where I'm standing doing my work and it's. Now, in my world, both people get drug tests. It's just me. OSHA says, well, did you really need to drug test the operator who was doing what he was there reasonable suspicion to believe that the that the machine person was doing something wrong? With me and how they're looking at this, I would suggest to you that you be creative in your reasonable suspicion. Is it possible? We don't know. Is it possible that the employee was impacted to the point that they weren't paying attention or unable to hear the forklift? I'm suggesting to you that when you send somebody for a post-injury drug test, they can document some basic form of reasonable suspicion. Make sense? Just to cover, right? Here we go. Discipline for late reporting some injuries. Now, let's expand on it. Is it possible somebody could suffer a soft tissue injury and not really feel the intense pain for a while? Possible. I would never, ever, ever in a million years tell an employer, don't discipline for late reports. I would never do that. That is probably one of your most important controls in the safety. Let me know when you're hurt. It helps the employee. It's in the best interest of the employee. And we all know it's the trick that's used to gain sensitive. So, by the way, this came out, and then a new administration took over and said, we are not going to really enforce the first two. Now, we have a different administration. They have not said what they're going to be. I don't know if that's dangerous to not know what their position is. It's still in the law. It's still in the regulation. But if you look at the internal documents of OSHA, during the previous administration, their documents was to not really emphasize the first two. Now, the last 2 points I happen to agree with. I've gone to employers and I've said, do you have a disciplinary action program for safety violations? This is the habits. You bet we do. You bet we do. Whenever an employee gets hurt, we discipline. Well, kind of an interesting concept, but might try the discipline or the injury occurs. Like when you see that the ladder's not being used the right way, that might be the best time to implement a disciplinary action program. See my point? So, believe it or not, I've never been involved personally at all. I've been involved in a lot of OSHA cases where this has come up, but it's in law. That's just because I haven't been involved in it, because it hasn't nothing or couldn't have it. Now, I will tell you, and I don't have the slide. I wish I did, because I use this slide all the time, and it really should be. It's not appropriate to have a safety incentive program where not having an injury is part of the qualification to get the award. How many people can do the same thing wrong over and over and over again, and nothing happens? Now, see, I'm the kind of person, I'm not good with gambling because I always lose. So I would not be the person that would do the wrong thing. I'm going to get hurt every time I do the wrong thing. I'm not one of those people that can play that luck game. The point is, safety incentive programs that reward for not having an injury, you're giving people money to dumb luck. They didn't do anything. The best safety incentive programs look at the behavior that drives a good safety. And you must perform your work safely, or foremen and supervisors must conduct toolbox talks and pre-task planning meetings. Those are the blocking and tackling, ultimately, that create, say, a good safety. That makes sense? So philosophically, I think number 1 and 2, it's really ignorant that the government got involved in those two things. I happen to agree that the last 2, I don't know that they should hold an employer financially accountable and issue citations. But I'm going to tell you from the safety perspective, I think there's merit in looking at those things, and Brett's changing the way you instructed your program. So, OSHA has not enforced the blanket post-injury drug testing safety incentive program since October 11th of 18. It could change. All right. Fatality and catastrophe. You are required to notify OSHA within 24 hours when one or more employees is inpatient hospital. Beth pointed out that does not include observation. The state can be different. So if somebody is officially admitted into the hospital overnight, you were to notify OSHA by phone or through the OSHA website. I'd recommend the OSHA website, because that notification goes to Washington, D.C., and then from Washington, D.C. to the area office somewhere in Denver. In other words, that buys time. Oh, you did the website? Oh, they. Over that up. How many government holidays are they now? 62. So, here's the problem. OSHA often listens to the news, reads the newspapers. If you fail to report a hospitalization, they can find out. Yeah, but actually, there's even agreements in certain parts of the country where the fire department, paramedics, contact OSHA and say, hey, got a job-related incident. And if you don't notify, kind of makes you look like you're trying to hide. That doesn't end. That's a funny story. I heard a story about an electric contractor in Chicago. Had a death on the job, and OSHA came knocking on the door. This fatality notification has always been in place. Knocked on the door, said, sir, here to investigate a fatality that occurred on your job. And the owner said, yeah, what did you say, Bill? Yeah. Bill died. Bill was a great guy. Suffered a heart attack on the job. And the compliance officer said, well, Bill suffered a heart attack with still 180 volts gas wells in his chest. And so the contractor was trying to skirt by saying this gentleman died of a heart attack when he was elected. Yeah. That didn't end well for the contract or the employee. Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with that, Brett. I mean, and I think people will know fairly quick. Oh, if it's unwitnessed, then all bets are on, right? You don't really. But yeah, then those strange odd things happen. And generally speaking, they'll it's a gray area. Heart attack and stroke, the never pre-existing conditions. I've got 99% blockage, and it's a miracle I'm still walking today. I pick up a shovel and do some strenuous work. Somebody could argue that's a work-related death. As crazy as that's. 24 hours after amputation or loss of an eye, 8 hours following a death. We already talked about hospitalization. So amputation is really weird. A lot of people think an amputation is where you lose some of the bone. And if you look, this is so weird. You know what an avulsion is? It's where the digit doesn't come completely off, but it's essentially hanging by a flap of skin. This is so bizarre. You put that back together, you put a pin in the bone, you stitch it up. That's not required in the reporting. But you amputate the very pad of your finger, that has to be reported. Remember, that makes sense. Within 24 hours following a work-related loss of eye. Unbelievably, loss of eye does not include loss of vision. So you could have a substance splash in your eyes and you completely lose vision, and that doesn't have to be reported to OSHA. Only the actual loss of the organ itself, and presumably not being able to find. Gallows stupid. I don't like yourself up a little bit. What can you do with it? Find a lot of material. So here is another weird thing. Same thing with hospitalization. If an employee is injured, but they're not hospitalized immediately, and then 3 days later, they take a turn for the worse, and they have to be hospitalized, that doesn't have to be reported. Don't get any ideas. Just wait over here. We'll bring you whatever you need. Wolf. Yeah. Failure to notify, don't do. Err on the safe side, err on reporting. Again, if you want to give me a call to hash this out over the phone, I'd be delighted to be there. I don't know why this one topic gets my interest so much, but I don't like to see employers get burned when they try to do something that's good. So we work through that, we work it out, it bothers. So anyway, give me a call. Oh boy. Yeah, the agency got overwhelmed with amputations. So the amputation reporting is fairly new. Fatality reporting always been in place. Hospitalization, believe it or not, used to be if 3 or more employees were hospitalized from the same incident. They had a criteria where it had to be 3 or more from the same incident hospitalized before you pick up. It's changed. The amputation in particular has caused a ton of work for the agency, keeping them very busy, as well as the the hospitalization of just one, because that unfortunately happens a lot. Making notification, you call your local area office. I know Beth's experience was kind of unusual and probably not what you expected, but we always recommend going to the OSHA website to make that report. Control the scene. Make sure you get treatment for the injured worker. Notify family. Conduct a preliminary investigation. I wouldn't get on the computer 5 minutes after this happening. You have a time. Use the time wisely, within reason. Without play. As long as you're within those times. Without play. You got a lot going on. Trust me. A lot of stuff's going on. People have to be notified. You have to get information. That takes time to talk. All right, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You may, believe it or not, has anybody ever gotten a bailing from the Bureau of Labor Statistics? That's how they collect benchmark data. And here's the weird thing. Remember I told you industries that don't have to keep logs? The BLS will send them a form and tell them for the next year, though you're not required to here, you have to keep OSHA logs for the next year so we can collect the data. That's how they get the benchmarking. Now, most everybody here is already in an impacted industry, but you still may get these BLS things, and you're obligated by law to take it. All right, let's get to the information we can use, because what we're really trying to do here, and many of you already know this, do this, the data we collect on an OSHA log, putting it into a format like context that you can use. Something that you can use to educate the executives of the company as well as the frontline. And that is the incident rates that we calculate. There are basically 3 in the world of safety that we focus on the most. The first one is the reportable incident. So that could be RIR, TRIR, TRRIR. There's like a zillion different acronyms. We're looking at the incident rate of reportable incidents. So anything that's on the law, whether it's a death, lost time, restricted work activity, or medical treatment, is a reportable event. So we take all those incidents that are on our log, that becomes a reporting. The dark rate, A's away, restricted, or transferred. So if you have an incident that results in either or both lost work days or restricted work activity, that's what this rate is looking at here. And the DAF rate, days away from work, injury, and illness. The DAFLE rate are only those incidents on the log that result in lost work days. Those are the 3 rates. Here's the calculation. So for each one of those rates, we total up the number that fell into those categories, everything on the log, days away from work or restricted work activity. The last one is days away from work only. We multiply it by 200,000. That represents the number of hours worked by a company of 100 employees. And then we divide it by the total hours worked. That allows us to compare the safety experience of a company with 100 employees to a company with 10,000. So far, so good. The peer data is located on the BLS website. I'm going to show you how to get there. Wow, it's almost like I didn't want to find an easier way to get the data. I'm too cynical, but we'll see. Here we go. So benchmark data, when we get to the, and I'm going to show you how to get there next. When we get there, this is what the BLS website gives us. So total reportable cases. These are the incident rates for these businesses here. Here's the NAICS codes. That's the total. I think I have another slide up. Doesn't show that. Oh, here it is. Sorry. So when you get this presentation, The incident rate of recordables is found in this column right here. The dark rate is found in this column that says total. And it put it. And trust it. See where it says cases with days of work, days away from work, and job transfer or restriction? That's both. Total. This column here is only those incidents that resulted in lost victims. So you can refer back to this to see your benchmark. Compare it to the peer group. Here's where we find the data from the OSHA. Go to Health and Resources, in the form. Go to Data. Nice. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go to So when you get to data, scroll to the bottom of the screen. It's buried in other data. Finding the list, injury and illness. Go to data. Then you're going to leave the website. You're going to get a pop-up. You're going to go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, injury, illness, and fatality. From there, you'll see this screen. Now you're in the BLS site. Thinking you can read in the OSHA website. You're going to go to industry incident rates. And then you'll see this pop. Total reportables, dark rate in this total column, gap week, days away from work only, in this column again. So, I'm not online and I can't scroll, but when you pull this up, you will see the NAICS codes with the description next to them. You're going to want to check your NAICS code to make sure you're in the right one. If, like I said, some of the issues come up, your work is more dangerous. Some of your work is more dangerous than other type of work you do. You should be using the NAICS code with the higher incident rate so that you're giving yourself a fair goal. You do it the other way around, and your work is more dangerous, and you're doing more of that dangerous work, your incident rate is going to be higher. I mean, some of the information that's already on there is questionable to get. How many feel like you're struggling to get to an incident rate of 1.5? So if we have an opportunity to establish a different code and it's legitimately reflecting some of the work you're doing, they should use the higher incident rate and developing a code. Again, I know this is confusing. I'm not able to scroll and spend 4 hours individually researching the code. Want to do that? Reach out, email me, call me. Be happy to walk through any. Some of the common mistakes that are made is your forms aren't current. You do it in January, you haven't recorded, the 7 events that should be on the log. Incorrect completion of the form, that column F on the log, improper description. If you see here, it's kind of hard to see, you can't read it, but there's 2 X marks in those 4 columns. That's a problem. I included more days than any. So what you need to put in that column F is injury or illness, that the part of the body that was affected, and what it was that caused that injury. Classify the case, mark the one column, enter the number of days away from work and restricted work activity, but the total number between the two for any one injury should never add up to more than 180. So we could have 90 days away from work, and we could have 200 days of restrictions, but you only include 90 days. Total of the people. Signing form, highest ranking executive. And kind of wrapping everything up, I think the record keeping is more important now than it's ever been. Your customers, many of you in construction, your customers, your general contractors, owners, you have to jump through hoops to get work. You have to go through loopy qualification systems like a Beta and IS Nut World. And on top of everything else, you've got that. You've got the data you have to keep accurate. Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. March 2nd. Oh, wait. March 2nd for electronic reporting. February 1st to put the OSHA log on the line. The OSHA 300. Look, accurate record keeping. I urge you. I've offered multiple times. Call me. If you are wondering whether or not it's still in the law, I'd be happy to entertain the call and walk through it. Only put on the log. Aaron, can't talk anymore. I'd be happy to answer any what. Anybody have any questions? Here's the most important question, right? Did you get something out of the workshop? I always believe you go through training and you only walk away with one thing that you didn't know before, then something wasn't found. So I'm glad about that. Thank you very much for attending our workshop. We will let you know about workshops in the future that we plan on conducting. We try to find content that is meaningful and helpful to you, but you have any suggestions, the topics that you may want us to address on date, I'm all ears. So don't hesitate to call. Have a safe day, have a safe year, and thank you for coming.